Hey everyone, Margarita here. This is episode number 22 on my severe carbon monoxide poisoning, and I've pretty much gone over the symptoms in a baseline of what my son and I had experienced, but what I want to do is I want to read all of the symptoms basically just off of Google, which would apply to the situation, because I think in total I probably had like 60 symptoms, depending on which point in the situation you're talking about. I mean, this is not funny, but I had like 60 symptoms at once. At one point, nobody would help me. So the fact that I'm even able to laugh now is like, you know. Okay, so now let's see. Now there is chronic poisoning, which means you're being exposed long-term regularly. And then there's chronic symptoms, which means you've been removed from the exposure most likely, and your symptoms are ongoing. And the exposure is not, or you could just experience a repeated a flare-up basically when you have more when you have a little bit more carbon monoxide. A little tiny exposure could cause that, so depending on how badly you were poisoned. Now if you have an acute exposure, it's usually one large. If you have an overload like that, one large poisoning, that's a little different. That seems to be a little harder to treat, or a little easier to treat, because and then it's like abrupt, acute. It's treated immediately usually, and then the symptoms don't stay extreme prolonged like that. So there's different variations of this. Everybody's situation is going to be different. I'm going to start with, basically I Googled this, so anybody can Google this. Everything you're seeing on Google all pertains to the carbon monoxide, so it's pretty much all correct. And it just depends on who you are and what you're experiencing. But I'm going to read the list I just Googled. Fatigue, memory problems, work difficulties, sleeping disorders, dizziness, neurological disorders, paresthesia, recurrent infections, abdominal pain, diarrhea, chronic hypoxia, brain fog, fatigue, central nervous damage. Okay, yeah, central nervous system damage. You'll end up shaking is what that is, because you're so overloaded with the carbon monoxide. It's in every cell and in your brain, so you're like shaking, and it makes people perceive it differently, which makes it harder to receive treatment, because they're looking at you like you have a mental disorder, especially when you're trying to tell them what it is, or they're looking at you like you have a drug problem. And I mean, I'm not judging anyone that does, but that's not what this is. And these medical professionals are not trained properly, so you're being untreated, mistreated. You're not receiving any help, basically. But, especially with my mother saying those things about me, and I just so happened to end up, and she was saying those things about me for decades. And then my injury happened all these years later, and it just so happened to be like that. That's what my injury looked like. Like, come on. What are the chances of that? So it's going to be hard to try to tell them. You can even try to tell them I don't have a mental disorder and a drug problem. This is what the carbon monoxide poisoning looks like. Margarita said so. Let me show you her video. I don't know what to do. I mean, it's extreme when you're in that state and you're trying to tell the person at the facility you're trying to seek treatment from, and it's not clicking for any of them. They're all morons, and you're in an extreme state of suffocation and brain swelling, and you need oxygen. That's what it feels like, and it's so urgent, and these people aren't getting it, that you're getting and you're shaking from the actual overload. And then it's a nervous system issue, because it's overloaded in your brain, and you're shaking. And the more you clear of the carbon monoxide once you find treatment, the easier this gets, the better it gets. It's not so extreme. I stayed that way extreme for years. It was bad. It was really, really bad. So to be where I am today, I'm so blessed and thankful, and I'm extremely humble for what I've been through. So if you're deprived of oxygen for a really long period of time, like that, and then you do eventually get yourself out of it somehow, and you start having some quality to life later down the line, years later, that's very humbling. You're never going to find another situation like that, where someone can actually pull their whole way out by themselves. But that is what I had to do, and that's the only reason I have all of this information and am where we are today, and I'm able to do these videos, because I did all that for us. Now, so I guess it also depends on where you live too. So It seems like some people are more educated in other cities and states than others as far as medical professionals on the carbon monoxide poisoning. So that, I guess, plays a role. I'm just going to continue on with some of the symptoms that I Googled here. So the central nervous system damage, it'll accumulate. So it makes that situation I was just talking about much worse. And it looks worse. You can see it. It doesn't look like you're overloaded with a gas, unfortunately. The fatigue, yes, the headache, continuous toxic headache, continuous migraine. If it doesn't clear within 2 days, I'd say that's carbon monoxide. I don't think there's too many things that cause something to be that extreme that long. It's not even migraine, it's like a brain injury. It's your brain pressed against your skull. If it's broken through, then you've had a brain injury as well. If you've had an unconsciousness period where your brain swelled up, a brain swelling episode, that's an additional injury on top of that. So you can be in and out of consciousness all through this. You can be unconscious right away. It can be delayed. It can be delayed days, weeks, a month even. You can pass out right then and there. Mine was 4 days later, so that's why it was so much more confusing. That's called delayed neurologic sequela, because your reaction to the carbon monoxide exposure, the large overload, was delayed. So mine was delayed 4 days. I took in a whole lot of it all at once in one weekend, and then 4 days later is when I overloaded after I was gone from the place. So you can have frequent loss of consciousness. It still happens to me to this day. I'm many years in, hundreds of thousands of dollars of treatment in. I still have that problem sometimes, especially if there's a re-exposure. It doesn't really just happen randomly. If I'm being exposed to something, then this will happen at the point where I'm at today. So, once you become injured, you end up with something called MUSES, or multiple chemical sensitivity. It's not just carbon monoxide you're sensitive to. It's every toxin, every chemical, every gas. And I believe the medical system is trying to deem that as a mental disorder, and it's not. And it can be caused by more than just carbon monoxide. It can be caused by any large exposure to any type of chemical or gas or such. So that is an issue. That will be an ongoing issue. You'll just experience all these problems from all that stuff, and that's usually when you'll experience more symptoms like that, or periods of unconsciousness. It probably means you had a pretty large, significant re-exposure of something. It doesn't even have to be carbon monoxide. Now, and it's really hard getting treatment in the medical system. It's just so broken. It's so far gone from what people think that it actually is. A lot of people do not live in reality. I had to learn things like firsthand, the hard way, the long way. I learned things differently than everybody else did out here. So the answers that I have are pretty in depth. Now, if you keep having the exposures, and you got to remove yourself somehow, you got to find a way to put yourself in a sterile environment and not have any. That's the only way out of this. If you don't, eventually, it will especially if it's carbon monoxide repeatedly, it will take over. Eventually, you just won't wake up. Now, let's see here. Like I said, the blood work will be off. So when you're trying to get treatment, they're gonna act like that's not what it is, because it's not in your blood work. It just shows all these other things wrong in your blood work. It's carbon monoxide. I know it shows the normal level. That's not. They're not taught to check for it properly. Now you can't have breathing problems, and especially if you were in a fire, breathing problems, chest tightness. Even if you're not, you'll feel the toxin, the carbon monoxide. It'll be moving all up and down your limbs, all up and down your body. You'll feel it. It'll be taking over. You can have all of these symptoms at once, like I said. So there's different degrees of it, and different, depending on what point you were, how long ago were you poisoned and you're trying to seek treatment. It could be a year, it could be a day, it could be a month, it could be 5 years. It could be any of these. Because I've read all types of case studies. At this point, I've read over 1,000 case studies. And I wish I could help everybody, but I can't. So, the sleep disorder thing. Now, I noticed my son sleepwalking the other night, and it's because we're actually in the middle of another gas spill caused by Ford Motor Company while I'm filming this. And so we're sheltering in place right now while I'm doing a lot of these videos. And he was sleepwalking. And so this could be a child or an adult. But when he was a baby, he would have these night terrors, I guess you would call them, or sleepwalking episodes. If he was walking, he'd be up walking, wandering around, screaming and crying when the injury was very extreme when he was younger, and unable to communicate. He wouldn't even know that he was awake, and he couldn't communicate. You could be talking to him and he didn't even recognize you were talking to him. He would just go on and carry on and be screaming and crying. But now that he's older, I actually seen him do this the other day, because he doesn't usually do this anymore. We just so happened to be in the middle of an exposure and a problem right now that I'm trying to take care of. But the city is not cooperating. So, or they're not admitting anything again. So I'll get into that in its own episodes. But I did watch my son sleepwalk briefly the other night, which I literally have not seen him do in years. And he did not know he was awake. Just like when he was little, he just was not screaming and crying. And when he was younger, it was night terrors. He was seeing something. He was seeing a creature. He was calling the creature Yellow Nicky. And the creature, I'm pretty sure, was a male, because he was comparing him to my older son, or I don't know if he looked like my older son or what, but he was calling him Yellow Nicky. And my son has darker features, my older son, so I don't know what exactly. Maybe it was glowing yellow, or the guy or the creature maybe was more of a whitish looking type of person. I'm not really sure what it was, because I knew he could see something at the time this was all going on. I knew he could see something, and at one time I was actually yelling at the creature that I knew he could see that I couldn't, screaming that you're not going to take my baby. So I'm aware he could see it. This went on for years. Once we crossed that first threshold, it stopped. This no longer was a problem. And this was literally the first time I seen my son sleepwalk like this in years, the other night. So he did go right back to bed the other night when it happened, but it's like as if his brain flips and goes into this altered state of consciousness in this other spot, kind of, and then does all these things and says all these things and actions, and they don't even remember any of it. And then I have videos of my son during during one of the Yellow Nicky episodes, or no, it was after. I had him explain it to me after, the next day or something, and I have it on film. So I'm going to see if I can find that video and release it. And I do have some behavioral issue videos of him throwing these long-term tantrums for years, so I'll probably release those videos as well, just to show you what a child with carbon monoxide poisoning that's experiencing that is looking like and acting like, because it's very intolerable. So the that could happen to an adult too. They could be sleepwalking. They could have the night terrors. What do you call those? Sleep paralysis demons is basically what it was. And now that he's older and I showed him the video, I figured out that that's what that was a sleep paralysis demon, where he was actually seeing a creature. And it would be in the same spot every time, where the creature would come through this like portal maybe. I don't know. Something like that. And he could see it. So if that's what's going on, it's not, and you can experience hallucinations. And this was not a hallucination. This was something different. So, I don't know, be the best judge. You know your child better, or if you're an adult and you've seen another adult in your home do this, or an older teenager, and you guys are all getting exposed, and maybe you're confronting them, you did this last night, and you left the milk out, and there's food all over the counter, and this, and they don't remember. They probably don't. They were probably sleepwalking. So that is another sign. So if you're experiencing, if this is something long-term in your home and your family members are like doing strange things like that, and no one did it, and it's causing arguments because somebody obviously did it and no one knows, it's because probably they're sleepwalking and no one actually remembers, or if no one's seen the other person do it, or the one that did it. That's a sign that there's carbon monoxide in the home, especially if you feel like something's off and you can't put your finger on it. That's like carbon monoxide. Which I'll talk about the different sources in a different video. But let me get more into some of these signs and symptoms here. Let's see. Now, dizziness can happen. That's another big red flag when it's first happening. That's one of the very first signs, of a very first exposure in the very beginning. Or when it's starting to get to a point where it's really bad, that's your big red flag. You are going to be dizzy at some point, or in an altered state of consciousness, or your head's going to hurt really bad. Those are the first signs. And then I woke up with my hearing lost several times in one ear, and re-exposures of other things have caused that along the way as well. So if I lose hearing in one ear, usually it's one ear, that's a sign that the oxygen's being slowly cut off from my brain, and I need to get to treatment, and I don't have much time before I'm going to lose consciousness. So I know that based on going through this for years on end, and I do know that ear candles help. So I'm not sure, that may not always be the case in that situation, in that moment. If you can't get it out with an ear candle, try to get oxygen. Even if it's regular oxygen, that would work too, because it's cutting off the oxygen from your brain if you've got hearing loss from it. in 1 year, like immediate, you wake up with immediate hearing loss, and it wasn't like that right before that. That's carbon monoxide. If you're experiencing all these other symptoms and you know that that's what it is, or you're suspecting it, that's a huge red flag. The other one is nausea, continuous waves of nausea and or vomiting and diarrhea, or it could be just one of those, or it could be all of them. You'll be like extremely tired, where you just can't shake the feeling of being tired and get back up, because I was always a very high functioning individual prior to my injury. So I never regained that, although I probably have more functioning than a regular person does that's not injured, which is probably why I'm still able to produce income. Just I have to do things on my own time, and just I can't really punch a clock. I can punch like a time period. You know, you can give me like a time window. I can kind of punch that now. But initially, that was not possible for years. So, you know, there's a lot of, you know, if you're just ongoing every day and you're starting to have trouble working, functioning, you can't get through the day, it's just kind of getting worse and worse, and you're just really tired and you can't figure out, especially if the people around you are experiencing this. So it could be in your home, it could be at your job, it could be, you know, if there's, you know, think of the source where it's coming from, and take a look at the people around you. That is a huge red flag. Because when you're in a state of carbon monoxide poisoning, you are so confused. You need somebody to tell you and direct you, like, hello, wake up, get yourself help, remove yourself from the situation. Like, you literally need to be shooken because you're so confused from the carbon monoxide, and you know it is, or you're pretty sure it is, but you don't see somebody around you suffering. You could just be the first person. The rest are on their way. It was just, you were just affected first. They need to be like told, hello, wake up, you have carbon monoxide poisoning, you're getting exposed, get the fuck out of here. Like, I'm telling you, I was even visited by an angel at one point, someone I knew that had passed away, and at one point, and that was my sign to leave and not come back. And that had happened to me, right? And I asked for a sign that morning, and I got it clear as day. I mean, this part, like, it was an actual human being, person, but the person resembled the person I knew that was deceased to a T. Talked that way, looked that way, dressed the way, everything. And I was asking for a sign that morning, and that was my sign. So you need to be removed from it. If you're experiencing symptoms like that and you're that confused, get yourself removed. I don't care if it's the place you make your money at. Remove yourself, or you're not going to be alive. I know the people have to be told. Like, I know once it gets to a certain degree, or you're just so tired you can't get up and you're in your home and this is going on in your home and you're tired, get up, get the fuck out. It's your home. Get out. Most likely your furnace, could be your gas dryer, could be the stove if you left it on too long, could be a leak somewhere in the line depending on the age of your home. There's numerous factors involved here. Regardless, it can be in the home. If that's the case and you're trying to get family members up, or everyone's really tired, get the fuck out of the home. Call 911. Most likely the fire department is going to find a very high level. You will get treatment immediately if it's something like that. Call 911, get the fuck out of the home. I can't, express that any further, like how serious that is. But when you're in that state and you're Googling around thinking that, that's what that is. You have to remove yourself immediately, or you will not be alive. That's how that works. It does not work any other way. It takes over your system 240 times faster than oxygen. That's why it's called the silent killer. Get up, get out now. Okay, now, I did have to do that because there's... when I was suffering like that, no one was doing that for me, and I knew that's what it was. And if somebody had been, I was just so confused. If somebody had done that for me, I would have left like immediately. I don't know what I was thinking. I was not thinking clearly at all. But I do know people need to be told that. So if you're Googling around because you think that you found my video, get up, get out. The fire department will come check your house for free. They will not check your cars, but they'll check your house for free. And if you think you have a problem with the vehicle, order one of the up to the second detectors that I talk about, I believe in episode 9 of my severe carbon monoxide poisoning. So you can go to that episode and look at one of the up to the second detectors. If you think it's something where you can't prove it or nobody will help you with a detector, buy your own. Start carrying it around and see where it's at, because there's little amounts everywhere, all over throughout the world. They're in specific places, but there's little amounts everywhere. More places than people are aware. I can say that. You will stay in an impaired mental state for a very long time. You'll have a personality change. Your personality could flip-flop. I do believe I was diagnosed with a mood disorder is what I think it's called on paper. And it's actually due to the carbon monoxide symptoms and not being treated, and the brain injuries and not being treated, and the ongoing effects that I suffer from, and then the re-exposures, and it'll change my mood based on that, especially because I'm not treating properly right now, or I was left for so long without treatment. Although I do know, like, over time that did start to clear up once I was treating, and once I got to a certain degree. It can still happen though. And it's just because of the ongoing, especially when you're left without treatment, you're suffering that long. You can snap real easily. You can flip-flop back and forth. It may resemble bipolar disorder. It may resemble what's the other one? Schizophrenia, or there's a couple of them. It may resemble those things because of the way the carbon monoxide works with the brain. And same with the sleepwalking disorder. It's kind of similar. It makes your brain like flip. Like, I was watching my child neurologically flip at a very young age. And then as we went through treatment, the problem started to clear. So it can mimic all of those things, and which makes it, that makes it so much harder, especially if you're having like memory loss and you can't remember. Like I was saying, like, you don't even know you're being poisoned, and the whole family is, and like maybe someone's leaving the milk out, they're sleepwalking, and it creates confusion, arguments, pain, like suffering. There's all these things going on, and then if everybody's confused, I can't imagine it being the whole household. I'm so glad it was not the whole household, because I couldn't tolerate what was going on with just the two of us, with the others in the home. Now, you know, people who have more significant breathing problems, like I used to run 30 miles a week regularly. I used to work out every day before my injury for years. So I think that's why I don't really have this issue unless there's an exposure. But you can have like breathlessness, shortness of breath, your heart's going really fast. That's the carbon monoxide, that's the particles taking over. It's taking over your oxygen, or if you're already overloaded, you're having a re-exposure, it takes over your oxygen very fast because your system's already overloaded with a different toxin, and it's blocking the oxygen already. So that's the result of that. That can happen very fast. Again, you can, even if you get regular oxygen, that's fine. Just get some to replace what's going on. That's what's causing it. And now it can cause seizures. I don't believe I've had a seizure. I did have 2 near-death experiences, I did die. I died twice and came back. But you can have seizures. I do know that. It wasn't personally my problem, but it can happen. So you can have periods of unconsciousness. While you're sitting, while you're just in and out of consciousness. You can just be standing and just lose consciousness. That can be how the case presents itself as well. So if you just like randomly pass out, that could be how it all starts, and to become known that you're having a problem. You know, you can experience death within minutes. You'll be dead within minutes. It happens very, very fast. So that's why I did this video where I'm kind of yelling at you. If you're Googling, obviously if you're Googling what I'm talking about, you have a problem. There's something going on. You need somebody to tell you to get up and get out of the home, or get out of the area that's causing this. Or if you have a certain area that you know has some type of problem, it's causing symptoms where you're not experiencing this somewhere else, that's most likely the area that's causing it, or the building that's causing it, or the car that's causing it. Now, I will do a whole video on the different sources and whatnot, but there is so many symptoms. What I'm talking about is basically the major symptoms that they're going to be noticed right away. Those and they're probably all going on at once. So those are the major symptoms. Now there is many, many more symptoms. All these other small little things can manifest over the course of time, like I was talking about in my other videos. Go ahead, it depends on which order you watch the videos in, but go ahead and watch the other videos, watch them in order, and then just because over time I start slowly, all these problems are starting to happen, but it doesn't really point to one thing. There's nothing screaming emergency. So that's another issue. If it's like a long-term issue, it's not like one large overload. So I will come back and talk about the different sources of carbon monoxide as well. So I'll be back with another one. I'm going to cut that video right there. Thanks. Bye.